Everyone wants to be happy. From the ancient philosophers to the modern self-help industry, happiness has been presented as the ultimate goal of human life. And yet, here's the paradox. The harder we chase it, the further it seems to slip away. The more we focus on being happy, the less happy we actually become. Why is that? And what does philosophy have to say about this strange and frustrating truth? Let's start with a simple observation. Happiness is everywhere in our culture. Advertisements promise us happiness if we buy the right product. Social media influencers tell us we can design our perfect life if we just follow their steps. Psychology books offer 10 tips to finally achieve happiness. It seems like the modern world has turned happiness into a project, something to be maximized, optimized, and measured. But here's the catch. When we turn happiness into an object of pursuit, it begins to escape us. The philosopher John Stuart Mill once said, "Those only are happy who have their minds fixed on some object other than their own happiness." Think about that. Happiness is not something we can hold directly in our hands. It's more like a shadow. When you chase it, it runs away. But when you focus on something else, it quietly follows. And this is where the paradox begins. The pursuit of happiness makes us miserable, because happiness is not the kind of thing that can be pursued directly. We can see this in everyday life. Imagine you go to a party and you tell yourself, "I must be happy tonight. I must enjoy myself instantly." You're self-conscious. You analyze your mood, you compare yourself to others, and you constantly check whether you feel happy enough. The result? You end up anxious, restless, and disappointed. The expectation of happiness blocks the actual experience of it. This isn't just a modern insight. The Stoics, like Seneca and Epictetus, warned against making happiness our goal. They argued that happiness comes not from external circumstances or from chasing pleasure, but from living in harmony with reason and virtue. In other words, don't ask, "How can I be happy?" Ask instead, "How can I live well?" If you live wisely, happiness follows as a byproduct. But if you try to grab happiness for its own sake, it dissolves. Aristotle went even deeper. For him, true happiness, what he called Eudaimonia, was not a passing feeling of pleasure, but the flourishing of the whole human life. It comes from fulfilling our nature as rational and moral beings, not from chasing the next burst of enjoyment. So, happiness is not something that happens in a moment, but the outcome of a life lived with meaning, virtue, and purpose. This already points us beyond the modern obsession with instant gratification and towards something deeper. But let's bring this into our world today. Why does chasing happiness make us so miserable in modern life? One reason is comparison. Social media constantly shows us other people's happy moments. We measure our own lives against curated snapshots of others, and when we try to match that image, we end up frustrated. The more we pursue the image of happiness, the less we feel the reality of it. Another reason is consumerism. We're told happiness can be bought, whether through gadgets, trips, or lifestyle upgrades. But once the excitement fades, we're left with the same restless heart, craving the next fix. This endless cycle leaves us more empty than before. Here's where psychology adds something fascinating. Studies show that people who focus too much on happiness as a goal tend to feel less satisfied with their lives. They set high expectations, feel constant pressure to evaluate their emotions, and end up disappointed. Meanwhile, people who focus on meaningful activities, building relationships, helping others, pursuing personal growth, report higher levels of well-being. The science lines up perfectly with what the philosophers already suspected. Happiness comes indirectly, as the fruit of living for something beyond yourself. Let's not forget Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and philosopher who survived the concentration camps. He wrote that happiness cannot be pursued. It must ensue. It's the byproduct of dedicating oneself to a cause greater than oneself, or to the love of another person. Frankl's insight came out of unimaginable suffering, and yet it rings true. Happiness is not the goal of life, but a side effect of meaning. So where does this leave us? If happiness cannot be pursued directly, what should we aim for instead? The answer, suggested across philosophy and even modern psychology, is meaning, virtue, and love. When you orient your life around truth, goodness, and beauty, when you serve others, cultivate character, and pursue meaningful work, happiness follows, often without you even noticing. It's like a fragrance left behind after walking through a garden. You don't grab it, but you carry it with you. This is the paradox. When you forget about happiness and live for something higher, you often find happiness along the way. But when you live only for happiness, you lose both the higher purpose and the happiness itself. It's like aiming at a target. The best way to hit it is not to stare at the bullseye, but to align your posture, your focus, your form. Then the arrow finds its mark. Let's be practical for a moment. If you want to test this paradox in your own life, try this. Stop asking, "Am I happy right now?" Instead ask, "Am I living in line with what I value? Am I investing in relationships? Am I doing something meaningful?" Focus less on mood and more on mission. You'll be surprised how your sense of happiness begins to grow when you stop tracking it. And there's one final twist. The paradox of happiness reveals something profound about human nature. We are not made for ourselves. The more we try to live only for our own happiness, the emptier we feel. But when we live for something beyond ourselves, for truth, for love, for God, for others, we discover joy, which is deeper than happiness and far more stable. Happiness depends on circumstances. Joy flows from meaning. So maybe the question isn't, how can I be happy? But what am I living for? Happiness then takes its proper place, not as the goal of life, but as the companion of a life well lived. In the end, the paradox of happiness teaches us that the more we chase it, the more it escapes. But when we live with purpose, with virtue, and with love, happiness follows quietly, like a shadow that never leaves our side.